staff person.
Michael really was the kind of lead convener, and that was very important to have somebody who was willing to take on that role. Michael would always do a memo right after a meeting and begin to delineate task forces that were tailored to whose interest lay where. So, for example, he laid out one of them as people interested in the Smartwood network, and he made me chair. Just sort of put that in the memo. You could object if you didn't want it. A secondary manufacturer from Colonial Woods in Minnesota said, I think we could convince the state of Minnesota to certify their state forests. And they got 500,000 acres. And that ignited some excitement. So boom, there's a task force, the Task Force on State Certification.
And those working groups then convene by conference call, occasionally face-to-face, to move each of those identified objectives forward.
It's now evolved into semi-annual meetings with 35 to 40 foundations all coming together to see what's going on and to see how their work can complement one another rather than compete with one another, and can move this whole certification movement forward in a collaborative fashion.
We typically would run through an agenda of 10 to 20 key challenges that needed to be addressed. And at the end of the meeting and the presentation phase, we began sitting down just with the foundations together to one by one go through the key issues that we had discussed.
And Fran Corton used to do this masterful job of almost in an auction capacity saying, okay, we've got Smartwood that needs this amount of money. We've got the buyers group that needs this amount. Who do we have who can step up to the plate here? And almost a roll call of donors and where the matches are. We've been able to engage in that way because of our communal interest, but also the level of trust that's been built over time.
One of our key funders has been the Mariah Fund. Jack has made modest-sized grants throughout this entire period of time, but in almost every case, helping something get started at a key moment. And so the value of the smaller sums of funds in this enterprise have been very, very important. Often the bigger foundations have had a harder time moving as nimbly as some of the smaller and medium-sized funders. So there are real roles for funders of all sizes. We've seen over and over again really interesting regional participation that's been timely on this issue that has propelled things forward in very dramatic ways. Yeah, one of the things that I think was a key part of our success early on was the willingness by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund to have a program associate level person dedicated fully to the issue. And that person was able to be a common good for the community, providing service to all of the foundations within the collaborative. And that was one of the key trust-building exercises along the way. And also offloaded a lot of the difficult administrative and organizing tasks so that we could use the time of the program officer participants who were joining us in the best way possible.
And another secret to a funders group, I think, is that you've got to have fundable ideas. Some funders groups, for example, are a little bit more like a seminar. They're to educate. In the end, a program officer's job is to make grants. And if attending a certain kind of meeting helps that program officer make better grants faster with more wisdom, that's a very attractive proposition.
In the United States, the major timber companies are fighting against it assiduously. They've created their own substitute program to imitate and ultimately to undercut the Forest Stewardship Council's program. Well, it is a challenge because they have millions and hundreds of millions of dollars behind them.
So it often did appear very daunting. I wouldn't say that we had crises, but it felt like, are we wasting our money? Are we helping these energetic, wonderful, idealistic people get out on a limb that they're going to fall off of?
Our meetings of the Sustainable Forestry Group also serve as a time when the representatives of the lead grantees get together.
These are the folks basically whom we fund, or who are a part of the quilt of organizations that are strategically involved. So the whole range of environmental NGOs, but you also have then the hybrid organizations, the FSCs, the Certified Forest Products Council, and then you've got the industry dimension.
There's just a level of trust and an ability to get beyond people's defenses and fears about, I'm going to reveal to the foundation, the weaknesses within my structure. And I can't do that because I'm selling. Well, that's gone from this process. And there's an honesty and a back and forth that you can really see between the foundation folks and the nonprofits.
So it gives me a much better sense of what my colleagues are doing. And it allows me to think outside of the box, and it's not just Smartwood's activities and interests, but it helps us figure out where we fit in this puzzle of certification and conservation.
We invited in last January for the first time Home Depot, and there were some donors who were a little bit nervous about this. Is she going to feel concerned that we don't have this huge advertising budget, that there are some real weaknesses in our flanks. In the end, Suzanne Apple with Home Depot couldn't have been a better bunkmate, if you will. But it was really wonderful to have her see, I think, a lot of those warts and still come away feeling glad that she's a part of this all. It was terrific to hear from her perspective some of the strategic issues that we need to think about.
An additional role that the collaboration among this funders group has enabled us to play comes from the magnitude of the collective support that we can propose to offer. When major corporations are thinking of endorsing FSC certified products as the kinds of forest products that they want to have in their stores to be sold to customers, one of the questions that they will raise is, how sure can I be that this organization is going to be around 6 months or 2 years or 5 years from now? The funders group has been able to send delegations of people from a variety of foundations and say, you make this decision. We continue to be committed to making certain that this system will work. In just 7 years, the number of acres of forest lands certified under the Forest Stewardship Council has gone from 0 to more than 50 million by the middle of the spring of 2001. So we're now approaching having 5% of the world's working forests under certification. The projections are that it will double again in the next 2 years.